Right now, our weather experts are tracking Hurricane Hermine.
Conditions expected to deteriorate hour by hour.
When you need us most, there's only one, the Weather Channel.
All the water is going to come that way. You tip it the other way, it's going to all go back that way. And that's essentially what's been happening with the wind field here. We're seeing the water move, and it can move a lot, especially up in this bowl and some of these low areas like Chris is talking about. So, Chris, it'll be interesting to watch the trends that you see up in that area. All right, guys, let's go back. I want to show you the radar here a little bit because I want to look at this thing. You can see how the eye is definitely getting kind of wide and at times kind of erratic. It's not a perfectly round, symmetric eye like we would see with a perfectly developed system, but it certainly looks like that circulation is trying to come ashore somewhere up there near St. Mark's. All right, or that may either be a little circulation within the broad center of the circulation, or potentially that could be the circulation itself. We're just going to have to wait and see and get the analysis from the Hurricane Center, or Brian, who's looking at it a lot closer than I am at the present time. Again, guys, we're right here along the Carabel River. All right, it comes down, it flows into the Gulf of Mexico. So it wiggles and wags and whatnot, and like Chris is seeing, where he is, because of the change in the wind, the water is kind of coming up. It's that plate effect. We're kind of tipping the plate the other way with the way that the wind is blowing in through here. All right. Let's take a look at, again, the radar. I want to show you the east side of this because I'm starting to get a little bit more concerned about some flash flooding that may develop. Remember, guys, before the catastrophic Louisiana flood, all of this rain moved up through western Florida, Taylor County. You remember they had about 2 feet of rain there across the panhandle and worked its way to the west. It wasn't so bad inland, if you will, in the Emerald Coast, but the Nature Coast really got whacked with heavy rain. So this whole area is very, very wet. And as you can see, we're just piling up the rain in through there. And occasionally, Forbes is even coming on and talking about the chance of getting a tornado spin up in through here, which is entirely possible. So this thing is coming ashore. It looks like, certainly if the numbers verify, it'll be the first hurricane landfall in about 11 years. Chris, do I still have you, bud?
Yeah, are you with me, Jim?
Let's go back and see if the... Yes, yeah, I want to talk to you again because sometimes, really in a matter of a few minutes, especially if you are getting water rise, you can see that. But you're thinking this is more runoff than actual river rise.
Yeah, that's what I think. I'm going to go double check, but just around the corner, okay. I do think it is. If anything, Jim, I think it's draining. Fortunately, I think it's draining in. I will double check, but it's just a matter of inches between this level and the river level. And Keith Cromwell, our producer back at the Weather Channel, I texted him some pictures. I think we can show you, Jim, the Maritime Museum. And again, my guess is in events like this, they expect it, because when you look at the interior of the Maritime Museum, you can see that like the shelves are empty, and they had put things up above, and then just the approach to it also, you can see at least a few inches going up. So this is one of the first reminders that if you live anywhere here in Florida, South Georgia, eventually into the Carolinas, if you're in a low-lying area that tends to flood in heavy rain events, get ready for it, because this is the sort of thing that we are seeing right now. And even probably about 6 or 7 hours ago, we were seeing some of the areas where it didn't like it was even rain that hard, we're starting to flood. So, Jim, that's, I think, the big thing here is can't forget about the inland flooding. While the surge is extremely dangerous, and we're looking at that life-threatening situation with the tornado threat that's significant as well, the flooding, especially at night, especially people driving around, could end up being a huge story, and hopefully it's not, but just everybody needs to remember that, the threat of the inland flooding.
Absolutely, especially when you consider the pre-existing conditions, Chris. If you remember Hurricane Irene back in 2012, we had all of that rain up into Vermont, New York State, and New Hampshire, and then all of a sudden here comes this tropical system and just absolutely crushes this area with a phenomenal amount of rain. So oftentimes it's the pre-existing condition that really is the catalyst for what essentially will be the over-the-top situation when you bring in a tropical situation in, a tropical storm in the picture. All right, guys, let's go and pull this Cedar Key camera out. I want to see what's happening here. Almost looks like we're getting a little water rise in through here. Earlier on, we could see the waves breaking, and there were times where you could see the road. It almost looks like it's just kind of one big wave now, rolling literally from the Gulf of Mexico up across Dock Street. Amazing. Amazing shot. All right, Dills, if you still got me, let's go to the radar. I want to look at a few different spots in through here. If people are watching us from Tampa, if they're watching us from Savannah, Charleston, Tallahassee, let's go ahead and give them an idea. So I just want you to kind of ring around the radar here. So again, here's the circulation center coming into Apalachee Bay. East side, Forbes has been talking about these bands, which are producing brief and very quick spin-ups, but there is that tornado potential. The watch actually goes till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's raining, as you can see, all across I-10. So if you're making that trip tonight, it's going to be a horrible drive from Tallahassee all the way to Jacksonville. A lot of you have beach plans. Obviously, it is the holiday weekend here, maybe getting an early start on that, and you can see where some of that heavier rain continues to be. Let's slide down toward Tampa, Dills. Let's see what's going on down there. I want to see, again, guys, because I'm out here and constantly, I don't get a chance to sit in my computer, so this is really my chance to look at what's going on here as well. Looks like the heaviest rain is up toward where Chris was the other day. I think Tarpon Springs looks pretty wet. On up towards Spring Hill, some pretty heavy rain. We'll see if that huge area of rain actually makes it in to the Tampa Bay area, because remember, that thing sits over Tampa. Now you've got southwest winds, all right, inland rain, the wind holding the water in from getting out. And you can certainly see a localized flood situation set up there. So that is absolutely something that we have to watch with this. Even though the storm is coming ashore, it is that rain band that may be the Achilles heel of Tampa Bay. All right, so we have to watch that. All right, let's see how far the northern shield of the rain is. Let's take a look at that. There may be some water spouts in that, believe it or not, as it comes ashore. Dills, let's go up towards Savannah, Charleston, Valdosta, that area. A lot of people coming down again toward Fernandina Beach, perhaps Folly Beach in Charleston for a beautiful Hilton Head Island. A lot of people go to Hilton Head. Looks like a big storm to the southwest of Charleston, between Savannah and Charleston there, working its way on off toward the. Look at I-95. If you're going from Brunswick up to Savannah, you get drier once you get toward Orangeburg and continuing up toward Florence. But this is all heavy tropical rain. Look at Hilton Head getting absolutely hammered right now. Needless to say, a lot of tee times are going to go by the wayside tomorrow if in fact you have them. Wilmington, North Carolina, getting some rain as well. And this is just the beginning of this. As Brian was mentioning, you can see it looks like the front is starting to mix with the rain. Some well-needed rain for Atlanta, for Greenville, Spartanburg. We'll take all we can get in the upstate of South Carolina, across northern Georgia, Alabama as well. Remember, we're talking about D3 drought up in here, so we will take whatever we can get. Dills, put the winds on there. We probably got some upslope. All right, so you've got east winds going into the Appalachians. That's causing the air to rise, and you're actually taking the moisture that's available with that east wind and squeezing out some showers and some thunderstorms over Atlanta this evening. We will take it, even though it's probably a little on the light side. Some of those areas, I do see some lightning with that, so there is, again, the chance of thunderstorms and lightning. Guys, we got a Tampa camera. Let's take a look at that. Let's pull that full. I want to show everybody what's going on down in Tampa Bay. Almost looks like a couple of lightning flashes off in the distance there, but kind of scanning the skies. We appreciate EarthCam's PTZ. We appreciate that. You can see, again, visibility is pretty good right now, but offshore, some pretty heavy rain that we need to keep an eye on, and that certainly could move in and cause some flooding problems overnight. So Tampa, you are not out of the woods with this yet. Cedar Key camera, though, this is the eye candy of the night for everybody who likes to look certainly at what can happen with storm surge. This is exactly why we get you out of areas that flood. It is because of situations like this. Onshore flow, the water rise due to the new moon, due to the storm surge from Hermine, continues to cause the water level here to be over 8.5 feet. Does it get to 10 near high tide at 3 o'clock? It very well could. We'll be right back.
Every day of hurricane season, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature.
You're talking about whole coastlines that could be drastically altered because of these massive storms.
You have purpose. You have to get these people out of harm's way.
There's no other place that has this amount of expertise than we do right here on the Weather Channel.
I think what makes the Weather Channel's coverage unique is that we are meteorologists. We know the weather, and that makes a tremendous difference.
Our nonstop coverage of Hurricane Hermine continues here. We are in Carabel, Florida, just up the road a piece, really, from Apalachicola, but dealing with, again, the western side of the circulation center, which seems to be breaking down a little bit, but that does not mean that the end of everything is going to happen as the circulation center comes ashore. Trust me on that. We're going to get some confirmation on that. Reynolds Wolf standing by in Tallahassee, a very heavily wooded area. And really, Reynolds, I'm trying to think back to when the last time we dealt with even a decent blow in Tallahassee in terms of the wind. A lot of those trees haven't been tested in quite some time, have they?
Yeah, it's very funny you bring it up because we actually had some people a few hours ago that came by and brought up that very, very same subject. They talked about how these trees have not been tested for a very long time. When you think about this great city, it's home to roughly 375,000 people. That is in the entire metro area. A lot of folks that are worried about these trees, worried about the power. Let's start with the power for a few moments. I think statewide, the latest we have is over 50,000 customers that are without power. Crews that, at least in this area, that were out and about trying to restore some of the power to those customers right now have been told to stand down. They're going to wait until this whole thing is over. That's a smart move because the conditions are going to get worse here. I got to tell you, Jim, the wind that we've had has been mostly, I'd say, from the east for the time being. I mean, we've had fits and spits with it. It's been strong at times. It kind of abates for a moment. Same deal with the rain. You'll see some of it fan out here right on the street corner. I mean, just comes cascading down. In terms of both of these things, I'll tell you, obviously, I don't think the flooding threat is going to be as great here as what you have in your part of the world, but the people here are certainly taking it seriously. In Leon County, Jim, they put out, I think, 30,000 sandbags that people have brought out just the last couple of days. So they are doing what they can to kind of hold off the prospect of those rising waters. Watch this, folks. Look at this. Sakes alive, man. When you've got the wind that comes down and funnels between these buildings, look how it sends the droplets right back towards the Capitol. Wow. Unbelievable. Chris, I don't know if you can pull over this way. Look at the wind from the top of the parking deck. Look at that nice curl you get right there. What a show. I'm sorry for nerding out on you guys, but every now and then, it certainly is a serious situation, but I sure like to watch Mother Nature do some neat things. It's going to do some bad things too, though. We're talking about a life-threatening situation along the coast. You got to be careful out there. If you can avoid traveling, that'd certainly be a very smart thing to do. Another thing you certainly got to do. Here in Tallahassee, same rule applies. People are advised to stay off the road if at all possible, and that is certainly would be a wise thing to do. Hey, speaking of traffic, I've just heard that Hermine is now making landfall. Is that correct, Jim? Having a little issues hearing. Jim, let's send it back over to you.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and that's good news and bad news because it's good news that it's coming ashore. That means it won't intensify anymore at this point, but the bad news is we still got a lot of ancillary things to talk about with this, including the storm surge. And I want to bring in Michael Lowry to talk a little bit about that. First of all, Michael, the landfall, where do you think this point's going to be? Somewhere up around St. Mark's?
Well, Jim, you know, it's kind of scooting right near Alligator Point right now, headed towards sort of Taylor and Dixie counties. I think actually the landfall probably end up being to the east of them. This is not officially, it hasn't made landfall, and you know, we'll see, because it's the center point of that donut there where that crosses the coastline is where this would officially be classified as having made landfall.
That's why I wanted that car there. Okay, Michael, so let's talk about surge now, because you're looking at the same camera I am at Cedar Key. The tidal gauge is way up there, you know, almost at 9 feet now. How much higher is this water going to get for these folks down here?
Several feet, Jim. We're already at a record surge value for storm surge flooding there in Cedar Key. I mean, look at this picture that we're seeing out of Cedar Key, Florida. This is incredible. And basically what happens here with storm surge is just taking the ocean water and then moving it in over normally dry land, and then on top of that you have the waves that are breaking. You're effectively moving the ocean into people's homes, into businesses, and that's what's happening right now along Cedar Key, Jim. They're at 5.5 feet, a little bit over 5.5 feet. The record storm surge for this area was 5.4 feet. That was recorded during Hurricane Elena in 1985.
Michael, does that surprise you, given that we've really only seen this develop today, and it is a low-end Cat 1? But it's really all about that trajectory, isn't it, with the wind? It is, and one of the more incredible things there in Cedar Key is they're gusting to 60 miles per hour, but this is not even a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane over there in Cedar Key. So, you know, it just goes to show you it's the breadth of the winds. Michael Lowry, storm surge hurricane specialist Chris Warren, Reynolds Wolf. We'll talk to all of them next.
Right now, our weather experts are tracking Hurricane Hermine. Trust in the Weather Channel to keep you ahead of the storm with critical information, not just for you, but also for your friends and family in Hermine's path.
Conditions expected to deteriorate.
Whether we're getting you through it or taking you to it, when you need us most, there's only one, the Weather Channel.
I think what makes the Weather Channel's coverage unique is that we are meteorologists. We know the weather, and that makes a tremendous difference.
We have a tornado warning just in now, and this is the area we're talking about. This is for Camden County and Glynn County in southeastern Georgia. A tornado has been indicated on radar, but what we're seeing here on the correlation coefficient, that little circled area right there, that is likely a sign that there's some debris. So a tornado is very likely causing some damage in that area right now. You need to seek shelter immediately. This storm is going to be around Jekyll Island around 12:30 a.m. and then moving towards Brunswick and Dock Junction. I'm meteorologist Jackie Jarris, and we want to set the stage and go back for you with what we know about the latest on Hurricane Hermine that is making landfall, or just about making landfall as we speak. 25.7 million people are under some kind of a tropical watch or warning from Florida all the way up to Sandy Hook, New Jersey. 5 Florida counties are under mandatory evacuations. 55,000 people are without power right now, and we got new numbers in from Tallahassee alone. 32,000 people are without power in that area alone. A state of emergency has been declared for Florida, for Georgia, and for North Carolina. We're going to go back out to the field live. Here's Jim Cantore. Hey, Jim.
Jackie, appreciate that update. And again, the radar you showed is probably one of the best signatures that we've had tonight with a hook on it. And the debris signature that goes along with that she showed is potentially debris in the air. So be careful, guys, around Jekyll Island. Again, we've been bringing you coverage again as Hermine makes landfall. We just heard Michael Lowry talk about bringing this thing in near Alligator Point. Yeah, great. It's not going to strengthen anymore, but the problems are going to continue throughout the night in places like where Reynolds Wolf is in Tallahassee. Reynolds, our wind right now is literally just blown around from the northwest. We can see the palm tree completely changing direction. What kind of wind do you have, and what kind of rainfall rate do you have right now?
You know, rainfall rate right now, I'll tell you, it's really hard to judge because we just have moments. We have that pulsating effect where you'll have the heavier plumes of rain that come down, then you have almost quiet times. The wind has been the feature, Jen, that really has been stronger just over the last several minutes that we had all evening. I can tell you that we've had some gusts that have been recorded very close to this vicinity, around 45 miles an hour, which is one of the big reasons for the power outages. Again, roughly over 32,000 customers without power. Now, how many people is that going to translate to? Say each house has each customer maybe 4 people. So again, it's going to add up, but it's going to get worse as we move on in the evening. Where I happen to be, got Chris Erickson is on the other side of the camera. This happens to be Adams Street that goes down towards the Capitol. You'll notice we've got some buildings, not especially tall, not like what you find in Midtown Manhattan, but still enough that when you have the strong winds along the surface that come zooming right behind us, actually they're from the west, or actually from the east rather, and they go through here. It's almost like the effects you have when you have Santa Ana winds. When you have those winds out west, when they go in those high canyons, and the air molecules are able to compress. And it causes the wind to get stronger. It really gives it a little bit of oomph. That's the situation that we have here. between these buildings, almost creating like a canyon. We do expect conditions to get worse. I did get some information from Sarah Dillingham. This is a short while ago. She gave me the idea that we're going to see probably the worst of it here, maybe around 3 or 4 o'clock, maybe 5 o'clock. But again, the worst, there we go. This is what we're talking about. Some of the stronger gusts that are coming through here, Jim. I hope you're able to see this. Best way it translates, you look at the palm fronds off in the distance. You see the trees doing very well, just like you said they would, Jim. The oaks, no major problem whatsoever. You see a lot of trash that goes right down the street, and again, conditions are going to get a little bit worse. All right, folks. It's all about Hermine. It's all about Hermine. It was tropical depression. Now we got a storm. It's onshore right now. We're going to talk how it's going to affect so many of you as we make our way over through the holiday weekend. Sit tight. You're watching the Weather Channel.
We want to encourage our people to listen to the Weather Channel.
It's a place you can turn to and trust.
There's no other place that has this amount of expertise than we do right here on the Weather Channel.
When it comes to a weather situation that warrants attention, we're the place to go. It's that simple.
Welcome back to our special coverage on Hurricane Hermine. I'm meteorologist Jackie Jarrus at the Weather Channel studios in Atlanta. I've got an update for you now on that tornado warning. It remains in effect for Camden and Glynn counties. This is in Georgia. Doppler radar is indicating some good rotation there south of Brunswick. This is very near Jekyll Island, and we've been watching this thing now for about the past 5-10 minutes, and we've been consistently seeing a little signature there on the correlation coefficient of what potentially could have been some debris. So we may have a little damage due to this tornado. That warning is going to be moving towards Brunswick at 12:46 p.m. and then it's going to be moving towards Piles Marsh after that, just before 1 a.m. So these tornadoes will spin up. They're usually rather weak and rather brief. However, they certainly cause some damage. We'll go back out live in the field with our continuing coverage to meteorologist Jim Cantori. And Jim, getting rained on again there.
Yeah, we've kind of come around. The same rain that Chris was dealing with down in Apalachicola has kind of rotated up into us now. Our winds are northwest, so we're on the back side of this thing. I want to bring in the police chief here in Carabel and talk a little bit about what's going on Highway 98. That's the main route to get east and west across the Panhandle, across northern Florida, if you're down near the beach. Chief, we understand this was actually closed for a while.
Yeah, it was closed for a short time. The water got up over the road for probably about 30 feet of the highway. Now the waters are seeded after the wind changed directions, and we're waiting on a crew to get the debris out of the road.
All right, so let me ask you this because you're familiar with the highway. As you go east and the winds are still onshore, let's say over, east of St. Mark's, do you think there's a chance that some water is washing up on 98 right now?
Probably down close to Alligator Point area, up around 98. Yeah, around that area. There's probably water up close to the road if it's not on the road right now.
All right, so have you got 98 clear here with the payloader yet?
It's still closed.
What is on it? Just debris, seaweed and things like that?
That's right, just debris. There's several roads on the island that's been flooded, St. George Island. Yes. Several roads over there is flooded.
We understand that. All right, sir. Thank you. Keep us posted tonight. Again, winds offshore here. That really helps, guys, in terms of keeping the water offshore, at least on this side. On the east side, we got a huge issue. We have record surge that you're seeing right now in the camera there at Cedar Key, Florida. We could actually see the tidal gauge get up over 10 feet very easily, and we still haven't gotten to high tide yet, and that wind is still onshore a little bit. All right, I want to bring in Chris Warren, I believe. Is it Chris Warren, guys? Keith? Is it Chris? Okay, I want to talk to Michael Lowry then. Let's talk a little bit about that. Michael, let me ask you something. Now that you're talking about the storm coming ashore, we still have high tide to go at 3 a.m. in Cedar Key, excuse me. How much higher is this water going to get?
Well, it got about 1.5 feet more to that tide as it comes in, so at least another 1.5 feet. It looks like the actual storm surge is leveled off, so maybe another 1.5 feet would be my guess at this point.
All right, so what are you expecting from this point forward in terms of the circulation? Is it just going to fall apart? Is the wind energy with this going to expand outward, and our area is going to see gusts really come down, or are we going to see some inland gusts here over hurricane force or just up in tropical storm force?
Well, let's show everybody where this is, Jim, because it's not all that far from making an official landfall here. Here's Alligator Point. Jim is over here in Carabel, Florida, Apalachicola to the west over there. It's right about in here. Now, the last point that we got, it was down here. The point before that, it was down here. These systems have a tendency to stair-step their way to the coast. That's what we're seeing right here. So I suspect that this is going to make a landfall somewhere either just to the south of St. Marks, maybe to the east of St. Marks, say Taylor, Jefferson County, Taylor County, extreme southern Wakulla County. You can see, though, this convective band right here that's wrapping. Remember, these convective bands wrap to the west in a counterclockwise fashion. That is wrapping toward Tallahassee. You know, let's take a look at Perry, Florida, because Perry's over here in that convective band that we're seeing here. There you can see really the winds and the rains whipping around there in Perry, Florida. Probably, you know, 50, 60 mile per hour winds, I suspect, in this band, what we're seeing here. But Jim, this may end up wrapping around in your direction here in the coming hour. So you know, you're not out of the woods yet. And then also you can see that band here west of Apalachicola as this all moves to the east. That'll be headed your way as well.
Hey, Michael, before I let you go, in terms of trends, do you see anything for Tampa, especially with that rain offshore, maybe kind of coming onshore? Is there any issues or concerns down that way?
Well, the concern in Tampa is that, you know, the tropical storm winds in this thing are 180 miles away from where the center is. That the sort of leading most band that we're seeing here is just to the north of Tampa, Jim, but that strong onshore component, we still have 2.5 feet of water, storm surge flooding there in the Tampa area, so that's going to continue probably into and through the overnight hours there in Tampa. That's my main concern here, not so much with the rainfall on this.
All right, we'll keep an eye on all this for you. Michael, thanks. Appreciate your expertise. Chris Warren joining us from Apalachicola now. Chris, when you talked to us last, you were talking about how, you know, it was raining so hard that some of the water was coming up there, both in a combination of the river and the fresh water coming out. What has changed with you since we spoke with you last?
The wind's not as consistent. It's a little bit more gusty. It's not raining as hard, but the water's still flowing, and it's going to take a while to drain, and the rain isn't over yet. It's still coming down. It's just not as heavy, and so you're left with a fair amount of water. And the thing is, it looks like it's just standing here, but it is moving. And so this water level is still higher than the river, higher than the Apalachicola River. That is about 30 yards from where I am right now. So this is all draining that way. And closer to the bridge, Jim, that would take us over to where you are, about 20 miles in the eastbound direction. That, I'm told, is typically a low-lying area where there typically is flooding. And the street is blocked off about a half a block away from here, and there's quite a bit of water. I didn't walk too far into it earlier because it looked like it was just a little too deep, but here the water is clear. I can see right down below, and the river's not too far away. So hopefully, Jim, that it's just going to end up being more of this throughout the rest of the evening and not getting any worse, as we are now on the far side, the western side of the storm. But regardless, in fact, I look around right now and I don't see any power outages, so at least here in downtown things are doing okay, Jim. But hopefully this is going to be it, as the storm is heading your way, it looks like.
Yeah, Chris, you remember the rain? I don't know if you can see my shot or not, but remember the rain that you were in, and it was just absolutely pouring and coming down? Well, that has rotated up this way now. Our winds are out of the northwest, and we're getting some pretty heavy rain as you speak. So all this is just kind of working its way from Chris to me up to Reynolds as we go on through the night tonight, and we'll continue to follow that for you. Guys, I want to show this is kind of one of the more impressive things, certainly that we've seen from video. I want to show you earlier on in Cedar Key, Florida, what it was like there. And then I'm going to take the camera, one of the 3 camera shots that you see up there, which is in the upper right-hand corner. So let's show everybody. Oh, great, I just lost our signal. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. So you can see how the water was kind of splashing up against Dock Street. All right, it was on the road, but it wasn't rolling across the road. So now that water's come up another 3-4 feet. And as a result of that, you can see essentially parts of Cedar Key have become a part of the Gulf of Mexico. All right, and as Michael just mentioned, another 1.5 a possible water rise just with the tide coming in, that is a very, very good possibility. You can see what it looks like down there right now. Guys, I've lost my monitor, so I can't tell exactly which we're on. So, Keith, you're going to have to feed me. I will say this. We are trying to, so this is Cedar Key we're looking at right now. We are trying to establish contact with the police chief down there. We talked to him over the last couple of days, Virgil Scanlon, to give us an idea of what he is seeing with him and his officers certainly around that have already, I mean, the good news is we talked to them this morning, and they had barricades set up all over the place. Reynolds was there too, and the barricades were set up in a fashion that they knew the roads that would flood. But this potentially has exceeded a little bit of what we expected. It's a record flood, like Michael said. So, you know, are some areas a little caught off guard? Is water coming into homes? Those are the kind of questions that we want to ask Police Chief Scanlon when we get a chance to talk to him, and hopefully we will do that. That is certainly a good possibility here, where you talk about water that hasn't been this high yet, but for the first time it has gotten this high. All right, guys, again, we'll kind of close off with a look at the radar here. You can see the center of circulation starting to come ashore now, perhaps just to the east of St. Mark's. We have not gotten official word from the Hurricane Center of landfall. That is the only place that it comes from. We can certainly estimate that it's coming ashore and maybe approaching that landfall, but until we hear from the Hurricane Center, we will confirm it as soon as we do. Guys, our coverage of Hurricane Hermine continues right here on the Weather Channel. We started out our day in Cedar Key, Florida, and have come up to Carabel to deal with certainly what appears to be a much lighter blow from this. But down in Cedar Key, they are taking the full brunt of storm surge and a new moon. I want to bring in Police Chief Virgil Scanlon, who we have spent the last 2 days talking to. Chief, you've got some very high water, record-setting surge down there. Tell us what it is like right now in Cedar Key.
We have water all over the place. Most of our tide poles are 8-foot MSL. And like I say, we have numerous residents underwater. City Hall is underwater. Fire department's underwater. All of Dalton Street is underwater. Several areas of the city's power is out. It's a mess.
Okay, so again, how many buildings are you talking about again, Chief? Too many to count, potentially homes as well?
We have homes and businesses. Probably, I'm guessing, probably 30 businesses at least.
IFB.
Like that, we're headed out now, actually, to my house. We have a tree down on my house, and my wife's stuck inside the house.
Chief Scanlon, this is Michael Ari back at the Weather Channel here.
Yes.
Where are you guys right now? Are you in a safe place?
We are actually in one of the military vehicles going on a rescue mission, if you will.
And at this point, what is your advice to those that may still be stuck there in Cedar Key area?
Say again.
What is your advice to those residents that may still be stuck there in the Cedar Key area?
Stay in your residences. Do not get out and try to move around. We have high water in numerous places. In fact, we're just coming up on a car that's totally submerged yet. So, like I say, just stay in your residence until this tide recedes.
And can you tell us a little more about your mission?
We're headed out actually to my residence. We had a free fall on my residence. We're going to help my wife get out the house. She can't get out the house.
Wow, I mean, those are just dramatic shots. I mean, can you remember in recent memory anything like this in Cedar Key?
I do not. I was here in '84 for Elena, or '85 for Hurricane Helene, and I don't recall any of anything this bad.
Yeah, that's what the surge of record that I've seen for you is Elena in August of '85. Let's throw it back to Jim. Jim.
Sorry, guys, having a little problem with all this rain. We're losing one of the IFB boxes, which is the way that they can communicate and when I can hear the chief. Guys, first of all, Chief Scanlon, thanks for talking to us, buddy. Hang in there. Another 1.5 feet. We got to get through this high tide at about 3 o'clock. Hopefully the winds will start to calm a little bit, enough to let some of that water down. But, you know, for the first time in my life, I actually regret leaving a position. I really wish that we stayed in Cedar Key with you, sir, and rode it out with you so we could show everybody what's going on there, because absolutely a very dangerous situation with the storm surge. And this is why we have the storm surge warnings from the Hurricane Center. This is why we ask you to leave and get out of harm's way, because of exactly what is going on in Cedar Key right now. And there could be more of this, certainly, as you go all the way up to Horseshoe Beach. There is Steenhatchee is another very, very low area up and through here. And, of course, Alligator Point, as we saw the water rushing under the house. Now some of these winds, especially from St. Mark's west, are starting to shift offshore a little bit. And that is good news, because that is going to push the water back on out. Heavy rain continues. We have a tornado threat, which continues all night tonight. And as you saw from Jackie Jarris up near Jekyll Island, we had a cell earlier. And frankly, by watching this all day, probably some of the best structure I've seen. So the storms, you know, certainly have a chance. These little individual cells or something even in the line, some of these rain bands have the chance of producing these tornadoes. They could be quick spin-ups. They could last a couple of scans on the radar. But either way, there's very good signatures on multiple radars that we will see these off of. We've got Charleston. We've got Valdosta. We've actually got Jacksonville. We've got Tampa's radar as well. Melbourne, if it gets that far east. We've got Tallahassee, and we've got Eglin Air Force Base. So a lot of 88Ds, a lot of NEXRAD radars out there to be able to watch these for you. Guys, we continue to be on the backside of this storm now. Winds are very strong out of the west-northwest. We have no protection here, and winds, again, gusting probably 40 to 50 miles per hour pretty easy. The water, though, at least here, is coming down. We'll be right back. All right, guys, just moments ago, we saw this camera, which has been stationed on Dock Street in Cedar Key, disappear. All right. As a matter of fact, it looks like there is a floating dock. There is a dock that has come up and probably knocked out the camera at some point in this. You may see this in the shot eventually come up, but look at that. A dock has come loose and is floated all the way up on Dock Street, amazingly enough. There's still power down there, which is kind of amazing today, but this is just moments ago. You can see where this dock has now come up onto Dock Street here. The water level, the tidal gauge right now at Cedar Point is 9.8 feet. It has never gotten that high. All right, and you just heard Police Chief Virgil Scanlon talk about that, and he has never seen it get that high. And there, of course, you can see now that dock has made its way all the way up on the street. It has probably hit the camera, and now we've obviously lost that camera. So incredible, absolutely incredible. Now there's the chance for that water to still come up. Let's find out how much higher. I want to bring in our hurricane specialist and storm surge specialist, Michael Lowry, to talk about that. Michael, let's discuss where we go from here. You saw that dock come up on the road. and unfortunately take out that camera because it really gave us a bird's eye view of just how high that water was getting. Right now, again, the gauge itself, the tidal gauge, not the camera that you saw, but at 9.8 feet, almost 10 feet. Incredible, incredible.
Yeah, that I should point out, Jim, that's below the low tide line. If you look at the effective flooding, about 6 feet of flooding there in the Cedar Key area. But this is a record for Cedar Key. I mean, the incredible power of the water, Jim. I mean, the camera actually is still going. It's just, actually we have is that live? Yeah, that is live. So you could still see the water hitting the camera, the tremendous power of this water. It's not just the water rise itself, but you have the wave action on top of that. You said this earlier, you've taken the Gulf of Mexico and you've now put it into people's homes, you put it into businesses, and that's what's happening right now in Cedar Key. And Cedar Key is not right next to where this thing is making landfall. It's down the coastline. In fact, south of Horseshoe Beach down there. A real quick look at the radar, Jim. I want to point this out. We probably are very close here to this making a landfall. We just got the latest advisory in from the Hurricane Center. Landfall, they say, within the next hour, but the latest reconnaissance had the center right up in here. So this is just to the south, it looks like, of St. Mark's. The Hurricane Center officially has this 30 miles south-southeast of Tallahassee.
Michael, what is the wind from that latest advisory? I have not had a chance to look at that at all. Yeah. Are we still... We're still dealing with a hurricane, right? That's correct. Yeah, still the winds are still at 80 miles per hour. The pressure, though, they have at 982. So the pressure has come down a little bit. And there's some indication, Jim, that sort of western part of the, I guess you would call it the eye wall there, is trying to close off. That's sort of been open for a while. And Tallahassee is really taking it on the chin right now. Well, some of the worst weather coming through Tallahassee right now. I can confirm that. What we got on the front end of this thing was more of an occasional gust, but now we're getting much more persistent winds out of the northwest on the backside of this. So perhaps that's a little bit of what you're talking about there. And it does look smaller, doesn't it, Michael? It's like it's almost just really wrapped up and tightened up, didn't it? It really does. I agree with you. It looks like it's tightening up here as it's coming in. So certainly this one's not weakening. And again, some of the worst weather just now coming into some of the biggest cities up there, including the capital city. Michael, and you can confirm or deny this based on what is truth, because I don't, but I remember seeing, I think, a tweet from Stu Ostro looking at a flight level wind at about 100 miles per hour in what was certainly a developing eye wall with this. Are they still seeing winds that strong up there, or what are the winds like now? I actually haven't looked the past hour what the flight level winds are, but I can confirm that the winds were above 100 miles per hour at flight level. This is at about 5,000 feet. You reduce it down to the surface, and that gives you that 80 mile per hour sustained wind. Right. Take about 20% off that. Right. So where do we go from here with this, Michael? And now you've got something that's holding its own, if not trying to kind of bump up a little bit as it comes on shore. And even though now that it's on land, since it's not weakening, it's going to take a little bit longer to wind down, isn't it? It is. And also it's a big storm, too, Jim. I mean, the extent, the breadth of these tropical storm force winds, 180 miles from the center. Tampa is down here, 160 miles to the south of where this is. And, they're seeing 2.5 feet of storm surge down in Tampa, which is so far away from this thing. So look, just you know this, when the center goes in, it doesn't mean that the impacts are over with. In fact, we're going to still see that coastal flooding through the overnight hours and into the morning hours in many places. Michael, we appreciate the insight on that. If you see anything else, please get back with us, obviously, and talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of trends. And obviously come back, too, when we get the official word from the Hurricane Center that we do have landfall. So instead of this happening on Thursday night, it is going to certainly happen on a Friday, making this, I believe, 1,082 days without a hurricane. Or no, not 1,081 with a hurricane, but 11 years, amazingly, without a landfall in the state of Florida. Just incredible. But I got to be honest with you, watching Governor Rick Scott pretty much go through it like clockwork today and yesterday and the day before, pre-positioning things, it's just so much of a different animal. Florida really does put on a clinic in how to deal with hurricanes, regardless if one happened yesterday or one happened 11 years ago. So, you know, I certainly advise emergency managers in other states, and there are other states that do a great job as well. I'm not saying they don't, but really Florida has just done a remarkable job with this, and hopefully we will come out swimmingly. But right now our big concerns are down towards Cedar Key, where Keith or Helen, do we still have this camera live or not? Did it come back? Do you know? This camera down at Cedar Key? Heather? Anybody? If we do, go ahead and take it live if you can't hear me. Here's the deal, though. What we watched, even if you don't have that, roll the video on what we had before. Guys, if you're just joining us, we had a camera station by Mark Sutta down on Dock Street in Cedar Key, which is where we were this morning. The camera stayed there. And we gradually watched the water come up today as the storm surge increased. And you had a max storm surge, I think, up around 6 feet is what Michael said. So, you know, you factor in the new moon, you factor in the tide issues, and now that gauge, the tidal gauge itself, is actually reading 10 feet. That's how high it is on the tidal gauge itself. But the surge component up around 6 feet. We're not at high tide yet, so it still has the chance to go up even more. We talked to Police Chief Virgil Scanlon about what he has seen down there, saying even with Elena, he never saw the water this high. So this is the highest it's ever been. This is a record storm surge for Cedar Key, and unfortunately, that doesn't mean anything. That's just statistics. You're talking about water that has gotten into people's homes. You are talking about streets that are underwater where wave action is sloshing things around. Water now that is coming into business as well. The City Hall, I remember basically being on Dock Street, being up toward the City Hall, the beach area, the park area, going around down toward the point. This area very, very vulnerable, and obviously with water this high, Cedar Key is essentially shut off via Highway 24. Not surprising given how high that water got. So again, guys, we've talked about the storm surge. The storm surge warnings were out. We knew this was coming, and it's not just Cedar Key. Michael mentioned Tampa Bay. Horseshoe Beach is another area we haven't heard from, but I'm sure the water got pretty high up that way. Steinhatchee, St. Mark's. At one point, we even had Highway 98, even here in Carabel, closed because of the water that came up. That wind is now offshore with the storm center moving its way further to the east. Amazing that the center of this thing is still deepening at this time. All right, Heather, am I going back to Jackie in the studio? Where am I going? Talk to me. So, Jackie, if you can hear me, take it away, darling.
We are continuing our coverage of the very near landfall now of Hurricane Hermine.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be somewhere Jefferson, Taylor counties, right in that area, right around the Big Bend in Florida. And continuing live coverage here on the Weather Channel as pretty powerful storm, strong tropical storm / Category 1 hurricane impacts are certainly being felt.
Yeah, we're already seeing those winds. We're seeing the surge, of course, there around Cedar Key. And we have live crews in the field. You've been hearing from Jim Cantori. Let's go now to Chris Warren, who's in Apalachicola. Chris, what are the conditions there like?
Well, things have improved immensely over the past couple of hours. We have been seeing some of the heaviest rain we have seen all day long. And it was when the storm was pulling away from us and we were getting it wrapping around. It was the northerly direction. It was interesting to see how the day really progressed. We got here about midday and the winds were coming from the east. So essentially where we are right now, I'll try to kind of set the scene for you. And this is the Apalachicola River right here. And it flows. I don't know how well you can see lights in the distance, but there's a bridge not too far away, maybe about a half mile away. And this river flows in there, and that's the Apalachicola Bay. And then there's the barrier islands there, and St. George Island is included in that. And then beyond that is the Gulf of Mexico. So we were seeing white caps on the river earlier today with the water coming in this direction. So it's coming from the east to the west. The river generally runs from north to south. And then we saw the winds while we're kind of looking over this side, the winds turning around a little bit, coming more from the northeast, coming at us. And then we moved and we were on the other side of this building that we're at, this motel, and the winds were just like an hour and a half ago, were howling at us in our face with the very heavy rain. Now that the rain has really calmed down quite a bit, the winds aren't as strong, and the winds, though, are still out of the north. So what's interesting about this is that look how calm this water is. and it's a little dark. There's been a lot of runoff. There's some debris in here. There's some twigs. There's some sticks and some palm fronds. But the wind is now going with the flow of the river. And when that happens, you don't have as much friction. You don't have the wind pushing the water as much. It's going along with, it's pushing along with the flow of the stream. So it's pretty calm looking right now. But again, here things are still looking to be a little unsettled through the night and into tomorrow. And we're seeing, you know, the showers here kind of calming down a bit. Meanwhile, things are really ramping up for meteorologist Reynolds Wolf, who is live right now in Tallahassee. And Reynolds, I was looking at the radar and I was thinking, oh man, you got to be getting hit. How's it going?
It's been unbelievable. It's actually calmer than it was about 20 minutes. It is just, it's almost like a horizontal waterfall.
I can't hear Reynolds. You're going to have to cue me. I can't hear Reynolds. You're going to have to cue me. All right, guys, again, Fear from Carabel. It's kind of interesting listening to Chris's shot, listening to Reynolds' shot. Chris had a lot of this wind and rain a little bit earlier on, but being the fact that this is kind of rotating up, he's only 20 miles from me. He's only 20 miles to my southwest, getting a little bit calmer now as this continues to pull ashore. Again, we are within... You know, I would say very little time in hearing from the Hurricane Center as to if we have a landfall with this. The bad news is, as Michael Lowry was talking about from the Hurricane Hunters, we actually saw a drop in the pressure a little bit. So it has not weakened in terms of the pressure, and the wind field certainly looks pretty strong as well with this. So don't expect it to just shut off once it moves ashore, especially on the very heavily windy east side of this. It's very lopsided. A lot of the wind energy has been on the east side. We've been talking about that, but you know, I got to be honest with you, when even as lopsided as it is, to think about where we could have been should we have had this just coming into the Gulf of Mexico. I don't even want to think about that. All right, let's bring in Michael Lowry to talk a little bit about this. Michael, anything more now on landfall or not?
Nothing, no, from the Hurricane Center, but this is getting very close to making the official landfall. It's the center of where the center comes in. So here's the center down here. I suspect it's right about in here, just to the south of St. Mark's. But I tell you what, Jim, Tallahassee is just taking it on the chin right now. Look at this convective band that's wrapped around to the west over them. As Reynolds was saying, I mean, some of the worst weather that they've had this entire storm has been in the last 30 minutes or so, as this has sort of rotated through, and this is rotating back around in sort of in your direction, and then Perry, Monticello also in that same convective band. So you know, things are really taking a turn there in Tallahassee as that eye wall type feature rotates in that direction.
We put this into motion. I want you to talk about trends where this has come really from Apalachicola on north. Is this essentially a part of this eye wall, or did this rotate in off of the Gulf of Mexico?
No, this is effectively part of that. You would call it sort of that northern westernmost eye wall. You know, when these systems come ashore, they have a tendency with that frictional component to stair step their way. So there's no telling. Like this could wobble back a little bit toward the west and even west of Tallahassee here in the coming hour or so.
All right, guys, what is the camera below Michael, if you don't mind? Tracy, what is that camera below Michael?
I believe that's Tallahassee.
All right, so that's Tallahassee. That's exactly what Michael's talking about, getting that western side. The rain is incredibly heavy right now and dealing with that. Michael, is this thing going to last for a while? Because now you've brought some of the strongest part of this hurricane inland into a very heavily wooded area, and where people's homes and power lines exist. We can expect a real ramp up of the power outages, can't we?
Absolutely. You know, I'm already seeing, you know, Tallahassee, we've already had reports of power outages. You know, I have friends and family there in the Tallahassee area. They're in the dark right now. And to your point, Jim, I mean, you go back to 1985 with Hurricane Kate, you had 50-mile-per-hour sustained winds. You did have gusts to 87 miles per hour, but they were without power for over a week in Tallahassee after that storm. So, you know, they get the sort of gust there with the amount of trees that they have in the city. This could be a big deal in terms of the wind impact.
And you know, Michael, you mentioned 1985, and I can tell you right now, pine trees grow very, very quickly. The live oaks don't grow very fast, and they're pretty stout. But the number of conifers across the South is pretty expansive. So that's going to be a problem. We're going to lose a lot of pines with this thing. Mike, where do you think this part goes? Does this thing hold together and continue to move north?
It looks that way, yeah. I mean, this sort of, you know, obviously it's moving north, but then rotating around to the west. So this is going to come around to maybe to the Sopchoppy area as this whole area lifts to the north and to the east. But you know what? I'm just glad that this is coming to shore right now, Jim, because this has really gotten its act together today in terms of its strength.
And you know, again, it's amazing because it's almost like it looked great at sunset, started to get kind of oblong and egg-looking like in terms of the circulation center, and it's really kind of tightened up here. What causes that? Is that something we normally see from the friction of the land, or are there other atmospheric things going on there?
I mean, there could be a little bit of a frictional component to that. You know, I just think that this was continuing. You know, we didn't see the sort of pressure falls as this was getting really close to the coast that we saw maybe earlier today. But I still think that this was in a strengthening phase. The Hurricane Center even mentioned it in their last advisory that there is a possibility that this could get a little bit stronger before it came ashore.
Right. So let's now take our opportunity that we have by seeing this and now almost casting it. Where does it go? In other words, who's going to get this worst band that you see? Is it going to go north? Is it going to keep rotating off toward the west? Name some cities out there that are going to be impacted by this.
Well, I mean, you have cities like Monticello. You have Perry that was already impacted. You have Madison. This could make it even as far north as Thomasville, and that's South Georgia. So a lot of cities here, a lot of towns. The I-10 corridor, especially, being impacted by this. All right, let's.
All right, Michael, take us through the timeline.
Yeah, let's do that. And I also want to mention too that this is such a large, sprawling system. The winds, tropical storm force winds 180 miles away from where the center is. So when you look at what's happening along our coastlines right now, those pictures that we saw earlier in Cedar Key, Florida, of 6 feet of storm surge, that's current flooding that's ongoing right now in the Cedar Key area because you have this long fetch of winds. It's not, this is Cedar Key, we have had gusts there to 60 miles per hour, but this isn't even hurricane conditions here. Generally tropical storm conditions there in the Cedar Key area, but it's because of those winds blowing over an area that's really vulnerable to storm surge flooding that we're seeing those type of impacts, even down into Tampa. This is 180 miles to the southeast of where the center is right now, just to the east of Alligator Point, south of St. Mark's in the Panhandle. Now we're in western Florida, and Tampa is an area that has just been getting clobbered here over the past few days with the heavy rainfall, these squally gusts that come through right now, and also the coastal side of this with 2.5 feet of storm surge flooding in the Tampa area. Now we still have to go through a high tide cycle coming up for a lot of areas. As Cedar Key, you're going to be hitting a high tide just shortly after 3 a.m. The water level will probably come up another ½ foot to a foot there in the Cedar Key area. And remember, guys, you're taking the Gulf of Mexico and then you're moving it into normally dry areas, into people's homes, into businesses, and then you're adding the waves on top of that. You've seen the dramatic pictures from Cedar Key. That's showing you the impacts here that the water's having along the immediate coast. And that's in addition to what's happening inland. The pictures that you're seeing there in Tallahassee right now, some of the worst weather in this sort of eye wall feature that are rotating back to the west and over the capital city there. You got 200,000 people that live in the Tallahassee area. It's just remarkable what's going on right now. Really the worst of the conditions as this comes ashore. All right, let's go over to Nick Walker, who's going to take us through the rest of the forecast. Nick.
Yeah, we're going to show you where this goes from here because we've got lots more land to cover here from Hurricane Hermine. And you can see already up into southern Georgia and even into South Carolina, we're seeing these bands of rain, very heavy rain, move northward. And even around Tallahassee, once again, we're seeing that basically what is an eye wall moving across the area right now. This is the path of Hermine over the next couple of days. We're looking at still by Friday morning, 70-mile-per-hour winds as this continues to track across southern portions of Georgia into South Carolina. The center getting very close here into the Charleston area and then moving up toward the Outer Banks of North Carolina, still with tropical storm force winds even on into Saturday morning. So still a lot more ground to cover here with very windy conditions. We're going to see more power outages, certainly more trees come down and branches down as well. Here's the timing for Tallahassee. Of course, we're seeing the worst of it now. Now through 3 a.m. will probably be the peak time, ending at 10 a.m. here on Friday morning. Valdosta, probably 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. you'll see the peak, and the peak here in Jacksonville not until 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. and not ending really until Friday night. So that's the way things are shaping up. We'll continue our coverage here of Hurricane Hermine. Stay with us. We have live reports from the field.
Right now, our weather experts are tracking Hurricane Hermine.
Conditions expected to deteriorate hour by hour.
When you need us most, there's only one, the Weather Channel.
You're watching continued coverage of Hurricane Hermine. I'm meteorologist Reynolds. We'll come to you by phone. You're seeing some images of what's happening right now in Tallahassee. It has just been an explosion that we've had of heavy rain and wind that has just been relentless. Just over the last 10 minutes especially, it's gone strong enough now that you're actually hearing me through telephone. I can tell you the conditions are not only bad. We've had not only the strong winds, and we've had the rain that's been relentless. We've had more power outages. Just a short while ago, I can tell you that we've had quite a few of the lights off in the distance that have been flickering, some out altogether. I actually also had a text a short while ago from one of our photographers, Rodney Hall, who at his hotel, not far from our exact location, all the power is out. All the power is out. He also reported that there were power transformers that he heard popping and then flashing and then gone. So that's the situation. The true power that we have that we're dealing with right now is our complement of Hermine. The system continues to march its way further inland and bringing with it more of the same. We can expect conditions to worsen here, especially over the next several hours. Unbelievable power of the storm. I got to tell you, some of the rain is the most intense I've seen in my career. And this, again, is just the early chapters of a story that we're going to follow over the next several hours, certainly the next several days, and possibly into next week as well. Again, I'm meteorologist Reynolds Wolf. We're going to hand the baton over to Jim Cantori. Jim, down along the coast. Crazy night, my man. What's the day to you?
Reynolds, holy smoke, man. It is absolutely hammering up there. I cannot believe the ferocity of that rain. And it's not only the rain, and it's rain intensities like this that have a twofold problem when you have a tropical system. Okay, I want to show you not only the radar, but also what the velocity is. Now, we're right there at Tallahassee, which is the radar. And so Sarah Dillingham is now queried wind over 90 miles per hour, only up about 200 feet. So it's not going to take that much to bring at least some semblance of that wind down toward the ground. All right. So there you can see what we're talking about. That is the rain, the wind, I should say, coming toward the radar. In the blue there, it's going away from the radar in the yellow and the red. That's where the line, the distinction is of where it crosses that line, the point of inflection. So again, the winds that are coming at that and in that band are up over 90 miles per hour at 200 feet. That is not good, because not only are you crushing it with rain, but you're crushing it with wind, and the potential certainly for tree damage and power lines goes up exponentially. All right. Reynolds, I don't know how far you ventured outside the truck or what you can see, but do you see, like, the branches swaying, like the winds have picked up along with the rain?
Without question, absolutely. We've seen some of the smaller branches. They're not just on the trees; they're gone. They're down the street. They're blocks away. I mean, they're now just projectiles that have just been blasted down this alley that we're seeing, just like a bunch of pellets fired out of a shotgun. I mean, just boom, and they're gone. I can tell you that we've had a couple of sconces outside the hotel that have just been ripped off. It's like a shredder. It really is. Very few times have I seen a situation like this. This is it's frightening. There's a meanness to it. There's definitely a ferocity to it. No question, Jim.
Reynolds, you were talking about it. You said, look, we're going to take the eye wall after midnight. And that's exactly what we're doing here in Tallahassee. So that's exactly what we expected. We started talking about this morning, and really it was one of our bigger concerns away from the storm surge and the rainfall itself was the kind of wind and the part of the storm that was tightening up as it came ashore and then eventually moved again up toward Tallahassee. Now, again, we have not received official word, I don't believe, of landfall, but it certainly looks like this thing is pretty doggone close to coming ashore. Hopefully it'll begin to wind down, but it's not going to be quick. A lot of you are in for a loss of power tonight. We got a long night ahead of us and a long day tomorrow. Our coverage of Hurricane Hermine continues.
The bottom line, it's life-threatening. We're going to see big storm surge. We're going to see a lot of rain. We're going to see flooding. We're going to see down power lines. We're going to see there's going to be a lot of risk if we don't do our job. Everybody needs to be prepared. We are blessed. We have the best emergency management teams in the country at the state and at the local level. We have a great National Guard, but you have got to take this seriously.
Good advice from Governor Rick Scott here as we continue to track Hurricane Hermine. We are just moments away from having an official landfall. This would be the first hurricane to make landfall in the state of Florida in over a decade. Let's get you the latest information and talk about that storm surge threat. Winds of 80 miles per hour. That makes this Category 1 hurricane about 30 miles to the southeast of Tallahassee, Florida. Tallahassee has just been taking it on the chin this evening. We're going to go to our own Reynolds Wolf, who's live there in Tallahassee in just a minute to hear what he's been seeing there. If you look at the loop here of this storm, the center of it is somewhere in here, so it's likely going to make landfall either extreme southern Wakulla County, which is down here. This is Jefferson County, Taylor County. Not a whole lot of people that live down in here, but in the capital city, you got over 200,000 people here, and a lot of those folks are without power right now because of the extreme winds that this system is bringing. This is not a system that's only affecting the areas right there in Tallahassee. If we widen the view here, the tropical storm force winds extend out 180 miles from the center of this. Now, Tampa down here, Tampa is 160 miles and to the south of Tallahassee, and they're seeing storm surge flooding, coastal flooding from this. But really the worst of the coastal flooding that we're seeing so far along the coast is over here in the nook of the Big Bend area, Cedar Key, 6 feet of storm surge flooding. That is water, Gulf of Mexico water that's being pushed over normally dry land and flooding the homes and businesses there in the Cedar Key area. That 6 feet is a record for Cedar Key. That breaks a record of 5.4 feet that was set in 1985 during Hurricane Elena. Here are some of those reports down in the Tampa area that I was telling you about. Still 2 feet of storm surge flooding. That's because we have such a persistent fetch of those tropical storm force winds, not necessarily about the strongest winds, but the duration and the distance over which the wind is blowing, and it's really been tremendous with this. And look, we're not even in to the high tide yet in some of these areas. Take a look at Cedar Key, for example. High tide is at 3 o'clock, so you know we have about another hour and a half or so until we get to that high tide. So the waters could come up an additional foot there in Cedar Key. We may end up getting 7 feet of flooding in the Cedar Key area. This is above ground, so you know if you're 6 feet tall, that is a foot above your head if you're standing at the high tide line. Take a look at those pictures in Tallahassee, Florida, though. That's where really the bulk of the heavy rain and the winds are happening right now. You know, we're seeing rain rates of 4 inches an hour in Tallahassee. Tremendous amount of rainfall. They're under a flash flood warning right now. We've seen gusts to 64 miles per hour at the top of Doak Campbell Stadium. That's the stadium for the Florida State University, and the Tallahassee Weather Service office there has reported the winds at 52 miles per hour at the top of their building there in Tallahassee. So extreme wind gusts. A lot of people are in the dark right now with this. this, and this could be a while before we get the lights back on here once this passes through. In terms of the wave heights that we're seeing here just offshore, some significant wave heights of 13 feet, 12, 13 feet. So, when you think about what's happening at the coast and the areas that are being flooded, you're pushing the water, the Gulf of Mexico, in to many of those locations, and then you're adding the waves on top of that, and the wave action is really what destroys a lot of these piers, these homes and businesses that are right along the water. Water is 1,000 times, 700, 800 times more dense than air, so it's got a lot of power with it. You can see here 6 to 9 feet of storm surge flooding here through the night, St. Mark's down to Cedar Key. All right, let's go to our own Reynolds Wolf, who's in Tallahassee. Oh, I'm sorry, let's go to Nick. I'm sorry, Nick, I thought we were going to Reynolds, and you're going to have more on the forecast here.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Tallahassee. Reynolds is there, and he's been talking about the very, very gusty winds. You mentioned, Michael, a 64-mile-per-hour wind gust there on the campus of FSU. And we are seeing just projectile-type tree branches, as Reynolds described earlier. This is the rainfall we've seen thus far in Tallahassee, 1.56 inches in the past 24 hours. But I tell you what, look at this. In the past 6 hours, we've had 1.25 inches, and it is just coming down in torrents right now. Basically, Tallahassee in the eye wall of Hurricane Hermine right now. And all along Interstate 10 here from Tallahassee eastward, we're continuing to see that that flooding rain come down. So we've got just numerous threats. We've got the wind threat with those tropical storm force winds. We've got the rainfall threat as well in this area. So here's once again the radar. Gadsden, Leon counties under a flash flood warning here as the rain has been so incredibly heavy here in this area. And look how widespread we're seeing this heavy rainfall right there along I-10. I tell you what, if you're there in Tallahassee listening to us and sheltering in place, please, we emphasize, do not venture outside. You really could be physically injured from flying debris with wind gusts like 64 miles per hour. So Tallahassee under that flash flood warning right now. You're seeing the water probably over the streets beginning to rise. Some small streams could be out of the banks as well. So 4.5 inches an hour, James Cinco tells me, 4.5 inches an hour. Incredible rainfall rates here around Tallahassee, and thus the flash flood warning in this area. Tallahassee, we're getting reports now in from the area about wind damage. A large tree reported down on Indian Head Drive. This reported by city officials there in Tallahassee. Many reports of trees down in southern Leon County. So again, trees are coming down. Tree branches are flying through the air with these wind gusts up to and exceeding 60 miles per hour. So we've got the flash flood threat. We've got the wind threat throughout this area. Tallahassee really taking it on the chin with the bulk of this coming through the Tallahassee area from Hurricane Hermine. So we're going to continue to see problems from Hermine in terms of the wind and the rain here for the next, probably hour or so before it begins to die down just a little bit. And of course, then it moves northward on up into the southern portion of Georgia. So what you're seeing in Tallahassee right now with the wind damage, with the rain, will be moving up into areas like Thomasville, perhaps over to Valdosta. So a lot of folks are going to be experiencing some of these same things. So let's go back to Tallahassee now. Reynolds Wolf is on the ground in Tallahassee, withstanding the wind and the rain right now. Describe it for us there, Reynolds.
Pandemonium. I mean, it's unbelievable. At times, the wind is just unbelievable. You can see it right here, just going right down the street. As you described, Nick, at times you will see things flying down the street, almost like shrapnel. So we really have to keep the head on the swivel and be really careful. There are a couple of sconces up here on this building, right here, that have just been broken up. And got a couple of guys out here trying to, well, who knows what they're trying to do, but I'll tell you, this place is as wild as you would believe. A lot of folks really have been out about earlier on the roadways just trying to see what's happening in their neighborhoods, and I'll tell you, really not the best of ideas. And Nick, as you just report a little bit, there was some reports of some trees that had fallen on roadways, blocking roadways. That's the reason why power crews that were out earlier had now been told to stand down. The best thing you possibly do is wait for this to drive its way farther to the north. Things get to calm down, and they come and they can start cleaning things up. But let me tell you, this is going to be a big mess. Got a long way to go. Very long way to go. Wait, forget what I was saying. Look at this back here. Unbelievable. Chris, come on back with me, buddy. We're going to make our way down here. Let's say, if we can, let's pan this direction, other direction right over here. You can also see over this green area, a lot more of those trees. Now, we've had quite a few lights over there that have gone out. No surprise, more of those power outages. As I mentioned earlier during one of my earlier updates, Rodney Hall, one of our photojournalists, was talking about the power being out at his hotel. I'm sure those problems are going to continue to mount up as we make our way over the next several hours. Again, the worst of it, around 3, 4 o'clock, things hopefully beginning to die down as the system lifts up, accelerates, and drives way farther to the north. So again, we're talking about the story here in Florida tonight, but the story we're going to be dealing with in short order is eventually going to be the Carolinas, eventually back up the Old Dominion states, then back out to sea, and then it's going to problem for the Northeast for a while. Let's send it back to Michael Lowry in the lab.
All right, Reynolds, thanks, man. It is just, this is the worst of the weather that we're seeing with Hermine right now there in the Tallahassee area. Part of the problem, Reynolds, that I'm seeing is that convective band, it's rotating through Tallahassee, but it's not moving very much. So, you know, this is not like it's just coming through and things are getting better. We're seeing, again, rain rates of 4.5 inches an hour in some spots. We've had wind gusts to 64 miles per hour. That's about 70 feet. That was at the top of Doak Campbell Stadium on the campus of Florida State University. It's this band right in here, though, that is sort of pivoting down from Monticello and through Tallahassee and now making its way down into Sop-Choppy, Reynolds.
Mike, I missed part of what you were saying. I heard you mention something about a gust around 64 miles per hour. G-Dime Weather, I believe, set that out. I'd certainly buy that. I really would.
Yeah.
How it's manifesting itself on the ground? At this point, we had a gauge earlier. We had some gusts here around 40, but I would certainly buy the one of 60. Michael, quick question for you. I know we were talking about the flooding threat that we're going to have in Tallahassee, but as this system accelerates and goes a bit farther and faster up towards north of Jacksonville, back into Georgia, as much of a flood threat there, is the system going to move too fast for that water really to pile up?
You're saying in the Jacksonville area, Reynolds? Were you saying in the Jacksonville area?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the system's moving too fast to have any real big problems there in the Jacksonville area. Most of the coastal problems are going to be just south of where you are, St. Mark's, Panacea, you know, and Cedar Key areas to the east.
Mike, let's send it back to you.
Okay. Yeah, Reynolds. I mean, it's that amount of wind and weather. You know, it's just hard sometimes to maintain our connection here. Here's a storm report from Tallahassee. Obviously, trees down all over the place there in Leon County, which is where Tallahassee is located. Power outages. The last I saw was 44,000 people that were without power in the Tallahassee area. So a lot of people in the dark here in Tallahassee as that band is rotating through. This is a city that has there are a lot of pine trees in Tallahassee, and they haven't had a big windstorm in a long time. In addition to the strong winds, you can see here that parts of Leon County, Gadsden County are under a flash flood warning. That means flash flooding is occurring or it's imminent in these areas. These tremendous rain rates of 4 inches an hour are causing some real problems, and there are a lot of hills in the Tallahassee area too. You can see accumulation so far. It says 6-hour rainfall, but most of this has been in the past hour or so of 2 to 3 inches. And you know, with those hills, the water flowing down and collecting in those low spots. And if you live in the Tallahassee area, I'm sure you're familiar with these spots. But you can see that the center of this thing is very close to making a landfall. We're waiting for official word from the National Hurricane Center. When the center of that donut area crosses the coastline, that is when we can declare landfall, and that again is imminent at this point, and that will make this the first hurricane to make landfall in the state of Florida in over a decade. We had to go back to 2005, the last time that we've had a hurricane landfall in Florida. Here are some of the wind reports. Now, some of these reports coming out of Tallahassee, I'm not sure how dated they are. I think we've had gusts as high as 45 miles per hour there in Tallahassee, at least least at the surface. But look down there in Cross City and farther to the south, gusts to 43 miles per hour. And Cedar Key, just to the south of there, there's a big band coming through right now in the Cedar Key area. And that's just to the south of the Cedar Key area, and that's causing problems there along the coast. So we got problems at the coast, we got problems inland. Let's check back with Reynolds in Tallahassee. Reynolds, how are things there?
I hear you a little bit better there, Mike. But I'll tell you, this really, what's amazing about this is the transformation, Mike, that we had just say over the last couple of hours, where it was almost sedated times, and then there's that crazy fury. The winds you were talking about earlier, G-Dime Weather had tweeted out, I believe, what, a 64-mile-an-hour gust on the campus of Florida State University. I totally buy that. I really, really do. The thing we've been getting here occasionally, though, is in our location, we've got these taller buildings, so the wind, as you know, just has been accelerating. I mean, it has been just like just a torrent. You see the rain just going through, the moisture just driving horizontally. I mean, it has just been quite a show that Hermine has put on, no doubt about it. The other few features that we've seen, quite a bit of debris that's also been tumbling its way down the street. Not a whole lot of people driving around, but certainly a lot of curiosity people. A few, just some folks going out and about, just checking out what's happening. I will tell you that here at this particular building, let's walk out a little bit. We've got these decorative chandeliers here that have just been knocked around like pinatas. And then on the other side, you can see a couple of our live trucks. They're kind of like just big metallic Clydesdales. They're helping send our signal out. And as we go right past these posts and try to make our way closer toward the street, we'll give you an idea of this park. Wind is unbelievable. When you step out to the open street, I mean, you kind of have to lean into it at times. Then it's not quite as bad. You get a little bit of a respite. Now, around the truck, this seems to be more of the prevailing wind coming in from that direction. That would be our east. At times, Michael, as I told you, it's like a pulsing effect. Picks up, it's crazy, then it's kind of quiet for a bit, and then it just ramps up. It's almost like it's inhaling and exhaling, so to speak. These trees have been doing a banner job. Some of the smaller branches have been knocked around, and those are the ones that get knocked down the sidewalk, down the street. You'll also notice, you look down, some of that water that's piling up. Now, Michael, at our present location, where we happen to be, we're just a few blocks away from the Capitol, so we're kind of high up. So the water's able to drain out and drain down to lower elevation. That's the good news for us here. But I got to think about a lot of the folks here in the neighborhood, a lot of people here in this area. I mean, you think about the city itself, the metro area has roughly 375,000 people. You certainly hope that they were taking advantage of some of those sandbags they were giving out across the county, across Leon County. And you know what? They have been. They have been. Over 30,000 sandbags were taken. People stacked them up around their houses, around their businesses. And we will see if that's enough to hold off some of this incredible rainfall. Okay, ladies and gentlemen tuning in around America, if you're not familiar with tropical weather, what we were just dealing with there was a feeder band. This is what happens. We're now going to start entering a pattern where you have this blast that comes through the water and the wind, and then you can kind of breathe easy. You can almost hear your own heartbeat. And then the furies ramp up again. And this becomes almost like a living organism. It's unbelievable. It's terrifying. It's mystical. And it's hard to believe, too, that we were talking about this thing with the name 99L. And then here it is coming to our shores. It's an amazing story, a terrifying one. And, folks, you really have got to take this seriously. So many people, think about the people on the coast. Other lessons we've learned, where Jim happened to be live, where Chris happened to be live, huge stories. But I want you to think about Cedar Key for a moment. I want you to think about Cedar Key for a moment. Cedar Key was not even inside that cone, and you see the problems they're having there. We do have new information. Michael Lowry, I know you want to share it with America. We have official landfall, don't we, buddy?
We do, Reynolds. As of 1:30 Eastern time, Hurricane Hermine has made landfall just to the east of St. Marks, Florida. As a Category 1 hurricane with 80-mile-per-hour sustained winds, 982 millibar pressure. That makes Hermine the first hurricane landfall for the state of Florida since Wilma in 2005, in over a decade, in October of 2005. So this latest information just in from the National Hurricane Center, hot off the presses. Hermine officially has made landfall as of about 15 minutes ago. That's east of St. Marks, Florida. This is about 30 miles or so to the southeast of Tallahassee, where Reynolds is, and has been reporting this evening. And this one, thankfully, is now inland because it cuts off its at least the energy that it's getting from the ocean here. But this is getting a little bit of help from the atmosphere as well. So this one is by no means done here. We'll have to watch this and follow this all the way up and along the East Coast. Let's go back to our radar here and let's show folks, if you can go to my max here and show folks what the radar is looking like right now, because Tallahassee, you know, as Reynolds was saying, very characteristic of these tropical systems, these feeder bands that come through, you get a really heavy squall that comes through, you get a little bit of a break, and then you have another squall come through. Here's Tallahassee. You're sort of in that call, in that middle ground between this squall up here that came through, and it's all sort of the same feature, kind of part of the same feature, just all rotating around where the center of this is. And again, this making landfall right in here, just to the east of St. Marks, on the border probably of Wakulla County and Jefferson County. Not a lot of people that live down here, but that heavy rainfall continuing through Tallahassee, up through Monticello, and then all the way up into parts of South Georgia, Thomasville. You're also getting in on the heavy rainfall too. So that weather that we saw in Tallahassee now moving up into parts of Georgia as well. A lot of folks being affected by this one. And again, we aren't done with this by any stretch of the imagination. We still have the coastal flooding, high tide coming up here in about an hour and a half in a lot of spots, or just over an hour. You know, in addition here to the heavy rainfall, the winds, the coastal threat, the tornado threat, this one has it all. We'll be right back on the other side of the break with live continuing coverage here of Hurricane Hermine.
No matter when or where severe weather hits, storm recovery is something we all can lend a hand in. And one of the best ways you can help is to donate blood. That's why the Weather Channel is partnering with the Red Cross. Here we go. Whether preparing for a storm or assisting in the aftermath, a donation of blood helps save lives, period. Visit redcrossblood.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS to learn more. Help with tomorrow's recovery by donating your blood today.
When the weather turns serious, the first thing I'm thinking is, how do I communicate the message very clearly to people so they understand what the risk is and how to get through this?
I'm meteorologist Reynolds Wolf, and you're watching continued coverage of Hurricane Hermine. If Hurricane Hermine were a heavyweight boxer, well, then Tallahassee has been the speed bag, has been the punching bag. We just dealt with a feeder band that lasted, it seemed like forever, a good 20, 30 minutes of intense rain, intense wind. Let's show you some of the damage that it did. Chris Erickson is the man behind the camera. And what I want to do first, Chris, if we can for a second, let's show right up the street where this was a pristine street, but right now you can see that we've got some shattered branches. There's a whole bunch at this time of Spanish moss that's all over the ground. These trees did a great job. What I find really amazing about this is earlier we were walking through here and we were just thinking things that may have problems in terms of the strong wind. One was this banner. This banner's actually doing pretty well. It actually was able to withstand. But the night is far from over and we can see a bit more damage here, no question about it. These trees, as Jim Cantori told us, would be able to withstand some of these strong winds. And here in Ponce de Leon Park, they certainly have, no question about it. You'll look at across the street. What's funny is a while ago, all these things were lit very, very well. Now there's a few more dark spots, power outages. I believe we have over, let's see, 73,000 customers 73,000 customers had power. FSU also now reporting power outages. People have been told to stay off the roadways if at all possible, just to keep the roads clear for first responders, for emergency vehicles. Thank you very much. And we've seen people, for the most part, paying attention to that. Others looky-loos, just getting out, trying to see how their community's going to weather through. But the thing is, we're not done yet, folks. If this were a big chapter, this were a big story, we're into the early pages of it. We've got a long night ahead, a long morning, long day, and it's going to be affecting not only people here in Florida, but across a great deal of the Southeast, rolling up the eastern seaboard, millions and more. I know so many of you were planning on a big holiday weekend. You wanted to relax. You wanted to have just great times. Weather was going to be the last concern, but it's a huge concern, and it could have life-threatening consequences, so please be careful. We're talking about the flooding that we have along the coast. Here, we've had reports of heavy rainfall, and I can tell you, testament of it, we see a lot of these. These were dry just an hour or so ago, but now they've become small torrents. You see a lot of the debris. Yeah, like these branches, so many of them, a lot of oak. It's a mess, and if it's not a mess, it'll do till the real mess gets here, because we're going to have a lot more of this. More of the bands are going to come through. We're going to have moments where it's going to be calm, almost sedate like this. That's the pattern. It goes nuts for a bit. It's quiet for a bit. As we have these concentric bands which continue to march on through this great city. This great city that's home to some 375,000 people. Many of them have a relatively new residence. More and more people are moving to Florida. So many more people that weren't here, say, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when you had these tropical systems. Chris, let's continue to try to walk our way back up here and take a look down the street. We were reporting from that corner right down there. You see our live trucks. You know, a long time ago, it was one of those things you never wanted the viewer to see, things behind the scenes. Now we welcome it, because we want to bring you inside the story of how we're letting you know how the experience that we're having and so many of your other countrymen are having. Power outages, we talked about those. Crews, and there are many of them staying in our hotel to help resupply people, help fix things up so people can have the electricity they need to get things back to normal. They're not going to be out on the roadways again until this thing calms down. When is it going to calm down? Well, we're going to hand it over to our experts in very short order, but we're going to go to the man too, Jim Cantori. Jim, you are down along the coast. The name of your... No, Jim is not with us. I'm sorry. Folks, if it seems like things are kind of a fluid situation to you, that's how it goes when you're doing breaking weather. We're all in this together. The great team is going to be assembled. We're going to be with you all the way through the weekend. And let me tell you, when you have a system that's this massive, it's unbelievable. We got to talk about some severe threats, too. We were talking about the flooding threat. We got a flood threat for this area, certainly. Tornadoes. I know some of you may be tuning in. You're saying, wait, we're talking tropics and you're mentioning tornadoes. Well, what's interesting is when you talk about these landfalling tropical systems, let's go this way, Chris. Tornadoes do form. They can form. Usually, and this is the good news about them, usually they're generally weak. They don't last that long, but the problem is they're rain-wrapped, and in this case, certainly they're going to be nocturnal. They can cause enough damage to cause you to lose your life, cause damage to your friends, your family, your community, so you have to take them very, very seriously. Certainly a situation where you want to hunker down, just take it easy, stay in place until this thing passes. I'm getting instructions from the studio of who to send it to in the lab. Could you guys please repeat, and I'll try to do the best I can.
Okay, thanks so much, Reynolds.
Nick Walker, my man, Nick, let's send it back to you, buddy.
All right, thanks so much, Reynolds. And you're right. It's very good advice. We really need to hunker down. And, you know, a lot of folks are thinking about maybe, you know, turning off the television and heading to bed. You need to make sure you turn on that NOAA weather radio or have your app on your phone with you. Some way to get a warning here during the overnight hours. There very well could be more tornado warnings, as Reynolds mentioned, during the overnight hours. They spin up quickly. They don't last long. They're not as strong as from supercell thunderstorms, but nevertheless, they're still tornadoes. They can still cause damage. They can still be life-threatening. So let's show you the area here in the immediate future where we could anticipate seeing tornadoes here during the overnight hours. Notice the tornado watch goes until Friday morning at 8 a.m. And this covers portions of central and northern Florida up through southeastern Georgia and even into the southern portions of South Carolina. So big widespread area where we could see these tornadoes spin up. And as Reynolds mentioned, we very often can see that happen with landfalling tropical systems. The thunderstorm forecast overnight covers a widespread area here from Tampa up to Orlando, all the way up into Jacksonville, Savannah, Tallahassee. Again, a huge area here where we could see that severe weather, including tornadoes. Our Dr. Greg Forbes, who invented the TORCON, the Tornado Condition Index, has a 7 still for northern Florida during the overnight hours, a 5 for southern Georgia, and a 4 here for west central Florida. This represents the chances, a 1 in 10 chance, on a 1 to 10 scale, I should say, a 4 in 10 chance of seeing a tornado within a 50-mile radius. And the numbers are pretty high here, as you can see, because this is such a widespread area, and they could be very frequent, and it covers an area all the way up tomorrow, even into North Carolina. So we're looking for the possibility of not only those those tropical storm force winds that could cause damage, but the tornado winds that could cause damage as well. A 7 in 10 chance here in northeastern Florida and in the southeastern portion of Georgia, a 7 here for the South Carolina low country, and even on up into southeastern North Carolina, a 6 in 10 chance of seeing a tornado within a 50-mile radius. So be vigilant, make sure you've got a way to get those warnings, and stay tuned to the Weather Channel. All right, let's head over to our hurricane specialist, Michael Lowry. Michael, bring us up to date now on Hermine.
Yeah, 80-mile-per-hour hurricane that made landfall officially half an hour ago just to the east of St. Marks, Florida. That's in the Big Bend area of Florida, just about 30 miles to the southeast or south-southeast of Tallahassee, Florida. Here's a 2 a.m. update from the Hurricane Center. You can see now 10 miles east-northeast of St. Marks. So the center of this hurricane is now over Florida. This is a state that hasn't seen a hurricane landfall in over 10 years, and a state that normally sees hurricane landfalls every other year. Moving north-northeast at 14 miles per hour, we're going to see that forward speed pick up as this scoots along the southeast U.S. and into the mid-Atlantic. We are by no means done with Hurricane Hermine here. We're going to be watching this one into the early, maybe middle part of next week. Here's the forecast cone from the Hurricane Center. You can see moving through the low country there of South Carolina tomorrow evening, or I should say this evening now, since it's now Friday. 50-mile-per-hour winds becoming what we call post-tropical, losing its tropical characteristics. It's no longer getting its energy from the ocean. It's now getting its energy from the atmosphere. Meteorologically different, but from an impact standpoint, it's going to feel like a tropical system. The main impacts here, though, as Nick was alluding to, the TORCON, Dr. Forbes with a high TORCON there, so there's a high threat there of a tornado, but also the heavy rainfall, which I'll show you in just a second. And then moving through the Outer Banks of North Carolina, I mean, we just finished with a tropical system. We had tropical storm warnings up for the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and then into this weekend, if you're out there or planning to be out there for the holiday weekend, good idea to stay out of the water, certainly, especially on Saturday. And then look up here. Anytime you see a cone do that, sort of spread out and bubble out at the end, that's telling us that there are a lot of question marks in the forecast. This is going to slow down and effectively stall out here, either overland or more than likely offshore. Although it won't be a tropical entity at this point, it's going to be sitting over some really warm waters, where it could try to regain its tropical characteristics. So if you're up in the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, pay close attention to this forecast. We have a lot of question marks here. We'll be addressing that, obviously. First things first, though, we need to talk about what's happening in Florida. Speaking of which, we have our own Chris Warren, who is in Apalachicola, Florida. Chris, you know, you've been dealing with a little bit of that coastal flooding. How do the waters look right now?
Well, things have calmed down quite a bit. Michael, before you go, I have a couple questions for you. Where we are here in Apalachicola, we got crushed a couple hours ago. The heaviest rain came through, and now it's moved on. It's not even raining anymore, and it's pretty calm. Every once in a while, it gets a little breezy. While we know this is still going on, Hermine is still affecting a big portion of Florida, but here I'm now, you know, to be able to take a breath and think about it. And Michael, what's it been exactly 2 weeks since we had 99L, the invest?
2 weeks ago.
Right?
Yeah, I've etched this one down. 2 weeks ago, I started talking about this on air when it had come off of Africa a few days before. So yeah, we're going on week 3 here of this system.
Yeah, that's out of control. Now, what are your thoughts? I know I'm trying to get you to start to look back a little bit. Well, I know you're still looking forward, but what are your thoughts about how today played out and how it's transitioning into what we just saw with landfall?
Well, Chris, there was always that concern. When it came off of Africa, I can still remember looking at that system. It had a really big, vigorous circulation with it. It was a big system. Big systems take a while to cook. We knew it was going to take a while for this one to gather enough energy to become a tropical depression. What surprised us, though, is that it didn't become a depression until it reached Florida. And then once it got into the Gulf of Mexico, we have had record warm waters across the Gulf of Mexico this hurricane season. So there was the concern here that this could be a strong and powerful hurricane. It ended up gathering enough strength to become a hurricane. But, I'm thankful that it wasn't stronger than it was. I mean, if you had left this over water for any longer period of time, it would have continued to intensify.
Okay, so that's fortunate. That's great news. Unfortunately, like we're seeing in Tallahassee and other parts of the Gulf Coast, getting hit very hard. And I know I can tell you there's been some flooding here in Apalachicola. But now, looking at how frustrating it was with the models, we don't need to go back and do the whole recap on that. But now, looking at what is this thing going to do over the next several days, Michael, off the northeast coast?
That is the question right now. As we look forward, we need to get through the impacts of today, but as we look forward, there's a frontal system. It's going to kind of merge with this frontal system, but then there's this mid-level area of low pressure that's going to come in and combine with this system, and this could be a pretty powerful storm that's sitting very near or off the coast of the mid-Atlantic for the beginning part of next week. And Chris, I hate to say it, but it could still kind of feel like a hurricane in terms of its impacts. At the very least, a tropical storm with the rough surf and the marine hazards, but the heavy rainfall all along its track.
But so what do you think it will be classified as? Are we going to be saying it's post-tropical? Are we going to say it's former Hermine when it's hanging off out there? Where are we going to be at that point, do you think?
Well, the National Hurricane Center, there was this, after Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy a few years ago, they've changed their rules so that even if this does become post-tropical, which I expect it to do, that the National Hurricane Center would continue to issue advisories on this, even though technically, meteorologically speaking, it's not a tropical system. They would continue to put out their forecasts and their information. That would include, and this is the good part, the storm surge information, because if this were to get close enough to the coast of New Jersey, and look, I'm concerned about the storm surge flooding up into parts of Norfolk here over the coming days, that the National Hurricane Center would then put out their information so that we could have that to then give to the public. So it's I expect this to be post-tropical, but it's going to very much act like a tropical system in many respects.
All right, so that's something that we're going to have to just wait and see how it plays out, because the models are very interesting with what it's doing. But bringing it back now to the here and now, Michael, and where we are, I've been watching the rain. It was really interesting seeing that the east winds, so that direction right there is the Gulf of Mexico. This is the Apalachicola River, which goes into the bay, and then beyond that is the Gulf of Mexico. So when the low was south of us, we were watching the hurricane was south of us. We had the east winds coming, and then as it moved away, the winds shifted around. And now we're watching the radar, Michael, hammering us for a while. Then now it's tapered off, and we're pretty much done. Don't see any more drops. When you look at the radar right now, what do you think is like the most interesting feature that you're looking at? We know Tallahassee's getting hit. Is there anything else, just by looking at the radar, that you are concerned about, or it's kind of catching your eye at the moment?
I don't know so much about the radar, but the fact that we still have severe coastal flooding that's happening to your east in Cedar Key, even down the coast, just to the north of Clearwater, Chris. We're getting reports of water that is getting into some homes there. That the extent of this circulation, the breadth of those winds, is affecting more than just those folks that are right near the immediate center.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't know if everybody at home knows that you're a storm surge expert. You were writing some of the models that the National Hurricane Center is using. Correct me if I'm wrong. But will you kind of talk about that, the storm surge, and how that played out? I was fascinated yesterday, where I was in Hudson in Florida, to know that there was already effective storm surge, even though we didn't have big waves. Anything surprise you about how the storm surge aspect of Hermine played out over the past couple days?
I actually think it played out very much like we expected it to play out. The forecast and the information that we got from the National Hurricane Center, Chris, the storm surge warning, most of those areas, all of those areas that were under a storm surge warning saw some coastal flooding from this. So overall, it's pretty much what we expect to hear from the storm surge side of this. Hey, Chris, thanks so much, man. I'm glad things are improving there in Apalachicola. We're going to go over to Ray Stasiak right now, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the city timing.
All right, Michael, thanks a lot. And it is certainly now that our storm has moved onshore, has made landfall, Hermine. It doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet, because as this storm tracks continue to go to north and northeast, we will continue to see not only the threat for flash flooding, but severe weather over the next few days and maybe even into next week as we get into the holiday weekend. Here's our forecast track. As you can see, the center of Hermine probably trying to go right down the center of that cone, and it looks like we'll have a storm that may maintain tropical storm force winds right on through the beginning of the weekend. So as we get into the weekend, for the beaches up and down the Carolina coast and once again into the mid-Atlantic, even the Jersey Shore, expecting to see some dangerous rip currents and some strong winds and some onshore winds too. A couple of cities that'll be affected: Savannah starting at 1 a.m. Friday, lasting through 10 p.m. Friday. The peak of the worst of the weather probably around 8 to 6 p.m. during the day Friday. Charleston probably about midday through the evening hours on Friday, and then Columbia and South Carolina 3 p.m. until 10 p.m. Worst conditions being heavy rain, most likely some severe weather with some of those bigger storms coming on through. As we roll further up the coast, this is where it becomes a little less sure of where we're going to see the most impacts or the highest impacts. We're thinking Saturday in Wilmington, North Carolina between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Raleigh about 11 a.m. until 7 p.m. and then Norfolk, Virginia 3 p.m. till 10 p.m. on Friday night. And then as we get further up the coast, we'll continue to get into the Jersey Shore, Philadelphia, New York City. Probably impacts as we get into Saturday and Sunday, right in the heart of the holiday weekend. All right, we want to go back now to Reynolds Wolf. He's in Tallahassee. Reynolds, give us the latest now on conditions. Looks like maybe it's settled down just a bit, but it looks like you're still getting some heavy rain.
Well, I think it's right on cue, buddy. I really do, because we were talking earlier about how we went from madness to sanity, and now we're going right back to the madness again. In fact, let's go down these steps now to the street. Things are a little bit different than they were the last time we spoke. We're going to go past the noisy live truck. Glad it's noisy because it ensures that we're able to get our signal back to you. And you'll tell the wind has begun to pick up just a little bit more. Now, the wind, that's still kind of a freaky thing. It's either on or it's off. Very little times do we seem to have just like a light breeze. It is either just game on. It is starting to pick up a little more. You'll notice the trees on top tend to be a little bit more swaying than they are on the ground. However, you look down, some of these branches, they were certainly not here earlier. We're starting to see those begin to collect. A lot of the ponding on the roadways, that's certainly been a problem. Another big problem, we got to keep talking about those power outages. I think the last number I heard was over 70,000 customers, not people, but customers that power. You bring in the customers, say each house averages maybe 4 occupants. Yeah, we're getting high up there. We're going to see more of those. However, in terms of power restoration, let's say you're in one part of the country and you know that you've got some relatives that have their power out. You know what? It may be a day, maybe a couple days. They're not going to try to restore it this evening, because you can't get those guys out in those buckets, those crews, to try to string wires up when you have these kind of conditions. So certainly some interesting times, to say the very least, and trying times. At our hotel, we still have power for the time being, but there are many that do not. A couple of transformers have actually popped. Wouldn't be surprised to see more of that action happen. You know, it seems like the outage is kind of like a contagious thing. It's kind of like a virus. So that virus is going to spread not only to parts of Florida, but possibly up into Georgia, the Carolinas, the Old Dominion state, and beyond. So we're in the early stages. Sure, it's made its way on shore. Sure, it's going to continue to bring the rain, the wind, the damage, and possibly some life-threatening situations. Folks, if you happen to hear my voice and you're tempted to go out on the road tonight, the best thing you could possibly do is stay at home with your friends and your family, take it easy, get some rest, get up in the morning, and then go look at things. But even then, you have to be careful, because our roads are going to be transformed. Ray, it's going to be a long night, certainly a crazy morning, and several long days ahead. No question about it. Ray, let's send it back to you.
All right. Hey, Reynolds, real quick. We've seen the rain. We've seen some of the wind impacts. Did you get anything or hear anything about flooding? We had that rain rate at up to about 4 inches per hour. Hearing anything about flooding in the area?
In our location, we have not. Where we happen to be, we're right up. The Capitol is only, like, say, several blocks away from us, so we're really at a high point. So the water drains off pretty darn well. We don't have any issues here. However, with the type of rainfall that you and Mike Lowry have been talking about, it's going to happen, buddy. Yeah, we're going to have some issues. There's no question about it. And certainly, I keep thinking back to what Jim was talking about. Our friends down in Cedar Key. Heart-wrenching times, scary times. And those are folks that are used to flooding. They've dealt with this before. But this is something that they've never dealt with. They've never seen before. They've never experienced before. And a lot of people who are new residents of the state of Florida, they're getting a dose of something that this state has not dealt with over the last 11 years. But it's here now. And its name is Hermine. We're going to have more on the system. We're going to have more on what it's going to do, not only here, but again, for many of you as we make our way through the holiday weekend. A lot of people are off taking a break. You know what? We're going to take a break for a moment, too. Going to commercial for a phone moment, but we're going to be back with more coverage on Hurricane Hermine. You're watching the Weather Channel. Stay warm, stay dry, more importantly, stay safe. See you in a few.
Every day of hurricane season, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature.
You're talking about whole coastlines that could be drastically altered because of these massive storms.
You have purpose. You have to get these people out of harm's way.
There's no other place that has this amount of expertise than we do right here on the Weather Channel.
Right now, our weather experts are tracking Hurricane Hermine.
Conditions expected to deteriorate hour by hour.
When you need us most, there's only one, the Weather Channel.